Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy.
What a filthy job.
Could be worse.
How?
Could be raining.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred's Perfection. I'm here with my co-host, Frank Bradley. Nancy's out for the day. She's in the background taking care of questions, but she had her implant put in, so she's going to be out for this week. Hopefully she'll be back next week. What's up, Frank?
Buddy, I'm trying to stay warm like everybody else is. Yeah, here on the East Coast, it's cold. I'll say that.
Give Go ahead and give us the breath test.
I might not do it. See.
A little bit.
Yeah. It's warming up in here a little bit.
Yeah.
It's 13 degrees. 13
How
degrees.
much?
13. It says it's 21, but with the wind, and the wind's going at it. So it feels colder than 13, though. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been getting a lot of calls from members that are dealing with the cold, and they want to know what to do about it and how to protect their birds. And, I told them for the most part, I know how cold it's going to get, but a lot of times you keep them from freezing or, like ice and wet and rain and keep the wind off them, for the most part, you're going to be okay. They can kind of handle the cold. But these guys are saying, well, my birds are on the teepees. What do I do? Because I have like over 100 birds on teepees. And I go, well, box up as many as you can, but definitely box up your best ones,
Yeah. Well, even when I had where I had to use the teepees, I would just go buy as much straw as needed and just cram those teepees completely full of straw. And they'll nuzzle up, make them a little nest in there and sit inside those teepees. Now, you'll have some that's idiots that will get up on top, regardless of what the weather is. But I go out during the night and just get them and stick them in that warm straw. So that takes a lot of it off of them too.
Yeah, I think a few of them told you that they lost some birds. Quite a few birds.
Quite a few. One night it got down to like 9 below. And that night there, and it was birds that was out on teepees, and they wasn't even getting in their teepees. They was going out on the ground and just sitting down on, finding a bare spot and getting on that warm dirt, trying to find some heat. So yeah, there was a few of them lost, but like I said, it was basically, birds on cords.
Yeah. Well, talking about cold, check out this picture. Whoops.
Kenny, give me all this.
I'm in trouble. Anyways, back to well, that's so much for just being in the background, I guess.
Well, I thought that was a pen. I had no idea it was a cigar. So
now you guys saw Nancy for who she really is.
I want to know where the long neck Budweiser was at, though.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe she'll forgive me. I may have to do the comments on my own now. So, well,
she disappeared.
What? Yeah, she's gone.
She's gone.
She's gone. So let's change the subject. We'll get into this.
Man, I wish I had my phone ready for that. Got a screenshot of that.
Oh, well, 40 years. I guess that's good enough, huh? I guess I don't need to be married more than 40 years.
Yeah.
So it was a good run. But I did get my brood pans all ready to go. I got all my birds mated up. I cleaned up the pans, got the litter going. All the nest boxes are ready. So I'm ready for breeding season. How about you, Frank?
Same way. Well, I got ready for it, and then all this crap come in, and they were laying really good, and we got this cold weather, and then boom, they come at a standstill. I've got a few hens still laying, but man, this cold weather will shut them off just like a clock.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, the weather's been good here. It's been on the cool side. It's nothing like what you guys are dealing with for sure. But yeah, birds look good too. I can't wait. I got to be careful how many I breed this year because I am going to be doing some traveling. I'm going to be going to Frank's house. We're getting ready to buy the tickets. I think we're thinking about May, aren't we?
Yep.
Sometime in May.
Yeah, close to Labor Day somewhere, or not Memorial Day. I mean, somewhere in that area.
Yeah. So that should be fun. Hopefully we'll get to visit some farms. I'm looking forward to that. So today we're going to be talking about breeding tips for the modern breeder, part 2. This is going to be really good information for you guys. And Frank, like I told you last time, we have the front end topics that we're going to cover, and then the back end are all marked members. So make sure we don't punch those up, and we'll take care of those on the back end with our members when we do the members roundtable live. So yeah, the first half is going to be for the public. The second half is going to be for the members. So you members, when we're done, which should be done like in about an hour, we'll be on the back end. And I'm looking forward to that. That's always fun because we can really dig in deep, and those topics are always the best. So I want to welcome all our new members. We got quite a few new members recently. Matter of fact, I got quite a few today, which is awesome. For those who aren't members yet, I would like to encourage you to join our newsletter, which is our Breeders Bulletin. You're going to get a lot of good breeding tips, free information on breeding, free ebooks on breeding, new opportunities for new members. So make sure you subscribe for that. Just go to www.breedersacademy.com. But the registration page is open right now. So if you want to become a member and you want to get the back end as well as the front end, go to www.breedersacademy.com to join. Just click on become a member, and that'll take you to the registration page, and you can join. And you're going to get a lot of good information other than just the shows. You're going to get the Founders Program. You're going to get the programs and the courses that support the Founders Program, and the members' favorites, which is the Master's Class videos. So
those are the biggies.
Yep. Okay, so this is going to be fun. These are topics I think everybody must know, should know, and I think you're gonna like it. And I think we're gonna do this for a while. I've been working on. I just been adding to the list as we go. Matter of fact, I added a bunch of them to the list yesterday, and this is some of these. There she is.
Who's that?
I don't know. Somebody who just curled her hair.
You clean up fast, Nancy. I'll say that.
We had it planned to.
Yeah. Nancy goes, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I go, "Hey, that sounds fun."
Yeah. When I first saw it, I thought she had a, like a pen, because it's down in the bottom and it's in black and white. So it's real small. You can't see it. I thought she had a pen, doing this. And I thought, is that something on her face? No, that's not nothing on her face, And then the show got started and I didn't pay any more attention to it.
Yeah, I saw you kind of look at her like, what the heck?
Yeah, you guys got me too, because I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I told Nancy, don't say nothing to Frank. Let's surprise him too. So
that was a good one.
Anything you want to add now that you're proper and looking good before we get started?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. And make sure that you give me a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And let's get on with the show. What are we talking about tonight, guys? Because I was frantically getting curlers out of my hair. So what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about a few different things. Just kind of working on the list, depending on how much time we have, will depend on how much we get in. If we, like this first question, Frank, is going to be, or the first topic is going to be, make sure the birds are, okay, let me say that again, because we use this for the podcast too. Make sure the birds you are selecting have the proper characteristics and trait. God, I can't talk all of a sudden. Let me start over, because this is part of the podcast. Make sure the birds you are selecting have the characteristics and traits you're looking for. I don't know why I'm having problems with that word today. Frank.
He did it.
Not very well. Frank, many settle with mediocre birds or birds with faults. And, it takes them a long time to create a family from that. And I think they get discouraged because they're not seeing the results they want to see at first. They have to kind of work through it before they start seeing what they should be seeing. And it can be misleading, especially the first couple of years when you start with birds with faults.
Yeah, that's really a nightmare. And I think about it quite often when I see somebody having difficulties. And the thing about it is, let's say, for instance, they start with birds that have many defects and faults, and they're not aware of them. So, they're starting to breed these birds and they're breeding them close. Let's just say, for instance, they're in and inbreeding them, okay? The closer they go, the more they're magnifying all those bad traits, even with the good ones. They're magnifying everything, especially if they're breeding in a proper way in the beginning. And a lot of them, they have no idea that they're breeding these defects and faults. And you look at it this way, they go 4 or 5 years and they've really worked with this strain. And then somebody comes by with some breeding knowledge and looks at them and says, well, you've got this defect, you got this defect, you got this defect. And all those 4 years, they've been breeding these defects. So, with me and you, we see that nightmare. We know how that can go. But somebody that's not knowledgeable on these, that's a lot of time wasted. 4 years in breeding a family just to find out you've been breeding the wrong, not the wrong way, but the things that you shouldn't be breeding for. And they wasn't even aware of.
Well, some of them can go a lot of years never knowing that existed. Nobody even brings it to their attention. The fact that they're not making the progress, they just assume that's just the way it is. That's just the way they're supposed to look. I think more of a bigger travesty would be the ones that do know that there's a fault, that there's a defect, or they're dealing with sick birds, but they have to buy them anyways.
Yeah.
And they're being told that that's the norm, that this is just the way it works, that having sick birds on your farm is just, it's just the way it is. Having to give them medications is just the norm. And, they don't get past it. They never get past that.
Well, it is a norm of today's times. And it's not only in fowl, It's in dog breeding. It's in horse breeding, cattle breeding, anything, any animal we can think of. Sickness is being looked at as like, well, that's just how it is. And we've got to live with it. We've got to buy these expensive medications year after year after year after year, spend $4,000 or $5,000 a year on medications. And that's just the way it is. And it doesn't have to be that way if you're selecting them right.
It's so cool because when we get new members and the first, we have the start here pages, and the first things they do is hit those pages we suggest. And part of that is the proper conformation and type of the bird, the proper carriage, the defects and disqualification course. And then we kind of move them towards the healthcare, and it really opens their eyes. And then they feel like they've been conned all this time, or they've been misled, and they get really frustrated because they actually, I think a lot of times they join thinking that I got some pretty good birds to work with. Great. I'm going to join the Breeders' Academy and I'm going to go ahead and breed them properly because I have good birds to work with. And then they find out that they don't, which is kind of a travesty.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, and this is what I try to let people know, the people that's using line breeding for a maintenance program, people that thinks that's the only part of breeding that there is, or just making crosses. And they run up on these good chickens. They get some real good chickens. And, they keep them for 3, 4, 5 years until they die out or they get so old they can't breed them anymore. And then they're gone forever because they didn't maintain them. They didn't make them a true family. And this is what I say to them. How many, the people that's listening to me right now, how many birds have you guys had over the years that died out on you that you give anything if you could have maintained them and kept them and had them to this day? Or the ones that added blood to them and destroyed them? What if you could have had the knowledge to breed those birds to where you could have had them today? And I know what the answer to that is. I've had so many people tell me I have wasted so many good birds and watered them down or let them die out because I wasn't aware that there was a scientific way to breed to where I could keep these birds how they are for many, many, many decades of years without ever adding blood to them. And you tell them that, and it's like, it's unbelievable. They can't take the term of, you can't keep, and Kenny, you know this, we've heard people say this before. It's impossible to keep a family of birds for 30 years without adding blood to it. But I'm here to tell you, you can, and I can prove it. I have proof.
Well, they can't because they don't know how to do it.
That's right.
Their idea is add new blood every few years or so. But yeah, that's a great point. These guys who spend thousands of dollars on a pair or trio to realize that, because all they do is they get them, they breed everything they can out of them until the point they don't breed anymore, and then they start all over. Okay, let's say they did get a good pair or trio, which sometimes they don't, but let's say they did. They screwed up. They could have actually kept the family of it, but instead they just bred them for all that was worth, tried to get as much out of them as they could, and then they started all over when they could have had something good. But a lot of times they're given fowl that are not related. The fowl that they are given produce halfway decent hybrid crosses, but they don't create a family from that either. But Frank, these birds are just way too expensive to settle for faulty birds.
Oh, I agree. Just breeding your own, raising your own is expensive enough. But when you go out and pay, $1,500, $2,500 for a trio, and here's another thing, Kenny, I'm probably jumping the gun on this, but we've talked about this before. They go buy the chickens and they keep them the way they are. They don't ever try to improve them in any type manner. They keep them right there in one spot and they don't go forward. They don't make them better. For one, they probably don't know how to make them better. But let's say if they did, a lot of them just gets them and they breed them the way they are just to maintain them over the years, just to have them eventually die off, and then they go buy more and do the same thing with it. They don't think about, let's make these birds better. Let's make them better than what they are.
Well, like Melissa says, there's a university that has a strain that will be 100 years old this year.
Yep. And
they've never added outside blood into them. And I've had mine for, I think, a little over 30 years now, and I've never added outside blood into them. You have to selectively breed them. Okay, you have to cull hard. You have to selectively breed them. Every breeding you do, every mating you make, has to be purposeful. Okay. And you have to use a proper breeding program to make it all work. So these people that say that can't be done because they just don't know how. Yeah. And it's sad because all these other guys are listening to them thinking, well, they're successful. They have a big farm. They should know what they're talking about. And then find out later that they don't, so.
Well, I've got the proof. I've got one strain that I've had since I've been 17 years old. I've had them for almost 37 years now. I'm giving my age out, but and another one
for me, Frank.
and then I've got another one over 30 years, just now turned over 30 years. So that's a proven point, and never added any of the outside blood to them whatsoever. And everybody's like, "Oh, them things are mutated. They've got 10 eyes," and they think of it totally wrong. I mean, if you know anything about Mother Nature and the way the birds are bred in the wild, then what can we do with selective breeding? Selective breeding is sped up so much that, we practically have a ball of clay in front of us with selective breeding, and we can build those birds any way we want, really. And people don't understand this, how plastic they really are.
Yeah. If they weren't, we wouldn't have the different species we have in the wild, that there has to be enough in there. Anytime you see variation within the birds, then that's proof that we can change them. Variation makes selection possible, and selection makes improvement possible. So anytime you see variation, especially when it works in your favor, you can move that strain forward. You see variation that works against you, you just cull them out. Either way, you're going to move them in a certain direction. Fernie says, in Mexico, it's the worst. The medication all over the board, it's part of their breeding program. I laugh at their ignorance. They never try to breed for resistance. And that's the thing, is they're kind of taught that breeding for resistance is not a real thing. I think I've, except for the biggies, like Newcastle's disease and laryngotracheitis, I think I've had just about every disease out there at one time when I first started. Okay. And I never see a sick bird, because I am quick to cull anything that's sick and breed to the healthy ones. And little by little, my strain gets stronger and stronger.
And the reason your success of that has been, too, Kenny, this, but for the viewers, you wasn't constantly bringing new diseases on your yard to start the process back over. Eventually, the offspring, breeding season after breeding season, finally become resistant to all the disease was on the yard, but they can't do it if you're constantly bringing in new birds that's carrying different diseases. And once you bring a new bird in, it starts to process back over again. And you're constantly doing that. So, you're bringing 5-6 birds home a week or a month or a year, you're never going to get there.
I'm convinced that's a problem in the Philippines. They want to say it's their location. It's the geographical area that is just conducive to a lot of disease. That disease is only there for a reason, because it has birds there that are contracting it and giving it to other birds. Okay. So if you practice a closed yard and you practice isolation and you cull the sick and breed to the healthy and keep those things isolated, protect it and away from exposure to other people and other chickens, you're not going to have that problem. I've had plenty of members that live in the Philippines that are using my method and they're making it work. You just got to keep them separate from everything else. If you're bound and determined to bring new birds or other birds back, you got to quarantine them. You got to put them, do the test. If you're not going to do that, then you're going to run the fate that the people in the Philippines have, and that is you're going to constantly expose your birds to disease. And it's the same thing with genetics. If you're constantly bringing new blood, outcrossing or crossing, whatever you want to call it, you're adding new genes. You're changing the family every time you do it, and you're giving them new recessives. A lot of times unwanted recessives. You're actually eliminating the homozygous dominant genes that you want to keep. And sometimes you're even introducing some lethal genes. Contamination, whether it's disease or genetics, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. You got to keep a closed yard, isolate your birds from the outside sources, protect the integrity of the family, and selectively breed them, culling out the defects in the sick and substandard birds, moving them forward, using a proper breeding program, and you're going to create a family. And I say it all the time, you can grab a pair or trio from any of these so-called big breeders, either replicate their birds which I think was hard because I think their birds are a bunch of crosses anyways. But in a few years, maybe even 10 years, your birds will be better than theirs if you know how to select them and breed them properly.
Much better.
You know, George is making it work. He lives on a tropical island, and he's doing that method of, you know, culling the sick and not using medications, and he's making it work. So it can be done.
Well, I know it can be done. You can't tell me that it can't be done. You know, people want to criticize me for saying that I cull everything, that I'm cull ruthlessly, cull the sick birds, substandard bird, defective birds. And they just have a problem with that. They think that you should be able to get them medications, that everybody needs to do that. There's no way to get around it, that it's a must if you want to keep birds alive. They think, Frank, without medications, the birds won't survive. That's a sad place to be, man.
It's taught. And a lot of so-called mentors this day and time, that's the first thing they tell the beginner they got to do. As soon as those baby chicks come out, is a broad spectrum antibiotic, or at least LA50. I mean, they think that a bird can't live without having medications, and it's not like that. My birds, the only thing they get when they come out of the eggs, and I put them in the brooder, they get some sugar water to kind of boost them, you know, to give them that little bit of strength where they're weakened to get out of the eggshell, and good clean feed. That's all they get. And I turn them, once they feather out, I put them on free range, and that's it. I don't give them any type of medications whatsoever.
I saw a banner or a picture yesterday that just made me crack up. It was like a medication or some kind of a program for baby chicks that every so many days you're supposed to give them something different. And I told Frank, look how many medications and chemicals are given these birds that by the time they mature, there's, you know, and I was like, I just couldn't believe it. I was sitting there looking at that. So I put on my Facebook page, improve your strain through selective breeding, not by chemicals and medications, just because, you know, I just couldn't believe what I read. It was amazing.
Yeah. And here's another thing. When you're giving all those meds to those baby chicks, me and Kenny was talking about this before the show. When you give that many meds, that broad spectrum, you have just destroyed that chick's immune system. You're going to have to medicate that chick every time it gets stressed, every time it gets cold or anything that stresses it out, it lowers its immune system. You're going to have to medicate that bird, even after it gets to adult. And that's no way to breed and have chickens. You want strong, vibrant, vigorous chickens. You don't want sick chickens, and you definitely don't. Sickness, me and Kenny knows this, sickness is like any other trait. You breed, you're modifying it, you're magnifying it, you're making it worse than it needs to be. So you breed sick, you get sicker each year. You know, it's going to go through them like hotcakes. But, you know, the way we teach, if you take the ones that's not affected by the sickness and you breed the healthiest and the most vigorous, sooner or later you get out of that. Now, the thing is, you got to have patience to do it. And I think a lot of times that's the problem, Kenny. It's just people don't have the patience and they don't want to go through the process of doing it because it's not an easy task.
We talked about that last week. We covered that quite a bit. Was you have to have the patience. But, you know, I don't know if it was Tony or one of my other mentors, but he was always telling me you can't create a strain with weak birds. And I know Tony used to tell me that you can't medicate your way out of a health problem. That the only way to get through it is to cull those birds and to select to the healthy birds, you know. But yeah, that's what I want to tell people is that these birds are way too expensive to settle for second-rate birds or substandard birds or sick birds or birds with defects. I mean, if you're going to pay that kind of money, make sure you get decent birds, you know, that are free of the defects, that are healthy, that are not substandard. They represent their breed, that you're going to be able to move forward. They don't have to be related. I mean, that's what the Founders Program is for. It will help you create a family from birds that are crosses, mongrels, hybrids, whatever you want to call them. You know, there's a process for making a strain out of those. They just have to represent their breed. They can't have the faults.
Even pure families.
Let me ask you this question, Kenny, because you're talking about when you first get your birds from, say, another breeder. Would it be a good idea? Well, first of all, I know it'll be a good idea to keep them away from whatever birds that you have on your farm. You have to quarantine them first. But would it also be a good idea, keep them as calm as can be? Don't try to stress them out too much.
Well, you always want to keep them stress-free. But I'll tell you, putting them through a little stress will show you exactly what's in them for sure. It could be, we talked about that many shows ago, that part of the quarantine process could be to stress them a little bit to see what comes out of them. Because you need to first put them through a 30-day quarantine to see if they express anything, to see if they're symptomatic for anything. Okay, but there's some things that could be hidden. So then you put one of your sacrificial birds in there. And if that bird gets sick from your bird, or your bird gets sick from that bird, that bird wasn't meant for your yard, And then once they pass that, then they should be fine. You should be able to integrate them into your yard.
Well, would you say the same if you have no chickens on your yard and you're just starting out and you just purchased your Adam and Eve? Would you say the same thing, kind of stress them a little bit to see what they got in them, make sure that they're healthy? Or
no, I wouldn't do it then. I would, Frank, wouldn't you say that you want to keep them as stress-free and healthy as you can? Because we're back to what we were talking about, where it's start with what you have. Start where you are with what you have. This is a great little booklet. And one of the chapters in here, it talks about, which we're going to cover, it doesn't cover it very heavy. I can go into my Dead Man books up over here and some of my biology books, is a term called selection intensity. And we're going to cover that because it's a very interesting topic that I think it's going to wake people up to how to improve your birds. And we might even cover it. There's a breeding program that we call improvement through reduction. And I think it goes good with selection intensity. We'll probably talk about them at the same time for our members.
Yeah. I've seen this many times though, guys. Somebody gets a trio or a pair off somebody out west. They live out on the east. They shove them in these shipping boxes. And, it's 2 or 3 days getting to where they need to be. And then they end up on a new farm. Now, a lot of times your roosters won't stress as much as the hens, but the hens can really stress. They don't like change. They don't like being, if you just take them in a cage and put them in a different cage, they'll stress. The rooster, not so much. He's eating it up, seeing different aspects of the yard and everything. But a lot of times people will get their birds, and that's a lot of stress rolled up in one, especially just the shipping. And they get them to their yard and they throw them out on their yard, and in 2 weeks they're sick. And now these guys are taking care of that by loading them up with antibiotics before they ship them, to where if they do get stressed, it doesn't show. So the first winter, they get the birds, they're super healthy, they're good shape. The first winter, say I get birds off Kenny, and he's using antibiotic medications and everything.
I do not.
he sends me some birds, and I get them on my yard, and he gives them antibiotics before they leave, for the stress. Well, I'm like, I got the healthiest birds from Kenny, they're in good shape. The first winter comes through and that cold hits, and they're not used to that, and it drops that immune system. You're going to see exactly what those birds has got hidden in them, just like Kenny was talking about a while ago. You're going to know every sickness that's in that bird, because when that immune system gets down and there's no antibiotics being used, you're going to see everything you need to see.
There's a number of peddler tricks that they do in their ship birds. First of all, they slip the spur to make an old bird look young. They pump them up with B complex, B12 to give them that little extra energy, so they look better when they're coming out of the box. They do all these different things to make them seem better than they are. They even spray them down with oil so that their feathers look nice and shiny and everything. And then it's just a matter of time before they have them. And then, like Frank said, a little bit of stress, a little bit of time, and all of a sudden they're not the birds they thought they were,
And then you call them up and say, hey, man, these birds are sick. Well, it happened on your place. It didn't happen on mine. It was healthy when you got them. So
yeah,
that's age-old game. I've seen it different ways. And you're right. People will they use it in the shows, but I've known people, so game fowl would use it. This pink, it's a hair product, and it's called pink. It's aerosol, and they spray it on the bird's feathers, and it makes the bird's feathers just as shiny as it can be. And then they get out in the rain, and it washes off, and then the feathers is back dry, look like straw again,
Yeah.
But there's many tricks, many
I was talking to Tony, and he was telling me how he goes to an auction that's near his house, and he'll see some big names over there buying birds for a couple dollars that look like a certain type of bird, and then they're mailing those out. If they can't meet it, or if they don't want to send their birds. So yeah, there's a lot of tricks. I mean, you really do take a chance when you're buying birds through the mail. From people that you should be able to trust too.
I've had guys actually call me up and say, listen, I've sold all my birds. I'm needing some green-legged, dark red birds, or I'm needing some light red, yellow-legged. Do you have any? And I'd say, well, what do you want them for? Because, I know they sold a lot of birds. And that's what they were out of birds, didn't have any more to sell. They'd have a buyer that liked them and was wanting to, buy a bunch more. And they was out looking for the birds that replicated that looked like those to sell back to that person. And, that in itself is just dirty, but it happens.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to say, there are some breeders out there that are honest breeders and try to give you the best that you can, best that they can give you without giving away their brood fowl to get you started. And, that'll be, by word of mouth that, oh, you can go to this person. They're going to treat you good. They're going to be honest. So they're out there too, because I know we even have some members here that's how they make their income is they sell birds or they sell eggs. And that's the way they make their living. So I'm not putting a squash on that because I'm sure they're giving their customers honest outcomes.
Well, this would be my criteria. I don't know if it would be everybody's, but one of the first things I ask, and I do it when I think they like a lot of members will say, hey, so-and-so has really good birds. He's really popular. You got to bring him on the show and talk about his breeding process. And so I haven't done it lately, but I would get on the phone with them, and I can think of quite a few where I get to talking to them, and the best I could come up with, the best of the best. They just didn't have a breeding program, and they did all the things that I would not have done, or they avoid the things I would have done. And so
we talked about that, Kenny. Just to do that would be really hypocritical. To bring somebody on there, or I just add blood to my birds every 3 to 5 years, or I breed best to the best, this and that. Yeah, we could have a bunch of different breeders on here, but that would be really hypocritical of me and Kenny to do that when we preach one thing and then bring somebody out on the show that totally does the total opposite. So
yeah,
I see that. I see that.
It's like I'd love to have somebody on the show that can teach them. If they have actually something to teach, I'd probably put them in the back end. But I haven't found that. They just, after talking to them just for a few minutes, I realized, wow, they don't really have much to teach anybody. They're just.
There might be some out there that know what they're doing, but they don't want to let it out.
I'm not getting that feeling. No, well, I can tell. I can read through them. They just don't know. That's why they say best of the best, because they don't really know what to do.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you haven't found people yet, because the ones that do know what they're doing do not want to come on and spew what they know, spew that they know what to do. So, yeah,
you're exactly right, Nancy.
Yeah, so we're at a loss for that.
Yeah, there's a couple that I know, and Kenny can tell you, I reached out to them, 2 different ones, and tried to get them. One breeds brother and sister every year. That's all he breeds, and he sells more birds than anybody in the world with game fowl. His birds are well sought after, and he tells everybody that. That's how he breeds. If you call buy chickens off of him, he tells you that's how he breeds, because he don't want them to say later on, well, I didn't know you bred that way, and I'm totally against inbreeding, blah blah blah, this and that. There's another guy that, everybody says it's like talking to you and Kenny. He talks the same way about breeding as you and Kenny talks. I tried to get him on the show, and he doesn't. The thing about it is, they don't want people knowing how they breed. I think that's the biggest part of it. Now, one of them just said, well, I don't want I just don't want the limelight. I'm not like that. I just keep to myself, sell my birds. I don't really go on any shows or anything. And I respect that. I really do. But the other one was just, I don't want to talk about how I breed, to where everybody and their uncle knows how I'm breeding my birds. So, I see that too.
I mostly go by, and I knew a lot of them before. Like a lot of my mentors were really good breeders and they had really good birds, and they really knew how to do it. They understood the process, and they didn't want the limelight either, except for Tony. Tony didn't mind, and he's kind of my confirmation type and carriage guy and color guy. You know what I mean? I don't talk to Tony much about breeding per se, but the ones I did talk about breeding, they didn't share. But most of the so-called big names, I look at their birds. I check out the videos. I check out the pictures. I'm not impressed with their birds. I'm just not. That tells me a lot right there.
Tony's good with anatomy of a bird, how he's supposed to look standing and walking, and the shape of the bird, the type of conformation, and the colors. The interviews that you've got inside the website. I love listening to those. I've listened to them. I don't know how many times. I think it's more his accent. He's very knowledgeable, don't get me wrong, but his accent along with his knowledge is just a great combination.
Yeah, I had his shows on for the last 3 weeks on the podcast side of it, and check those out. They're on YouTube, and they're on the podcast format platforms. And I'll have them on for a while. They won't be on forever. I'll leave them on for a little bit longer. They're getting a lot of views, but eventually I'll take them off.
And plus, he loves giving Kenny hell.
What, Nancy?
They'll go into the Breeders' Academy.
They are in the Breeders' Academy. They are. Yeah. But I will be taking them off of there in the near future. What'd you say, Frank?
He loves giving you hell too.
Oh, we give each other hell. We've been doing that for years.
He really, you can hear it in his voice. He enjoys giving Kenny hell. Now he sweet talks Nancy always and takes up for Nancy, but he loves breaking Kenny. He busts on Kenny any chance he gets. Chance he gets.
He's always like, Nancy, girl, what do you see in this guy? I'm like, hey, you're ruining my time here. Watch it.
He's definitely a Nancy fan. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Everybody is.
Yeah.
He's a favorite of mine. I'll tell you that. He's one of my favorite guys.
He's a good guy.
I learned a lot from Tony. He really woke me up. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And through him, I met other mentors, especially when it came to breeding. And between all the mentors, they really showed me what I need to learn, what I needed to do. And it showed me which books I needed to find and then put those into practice. And, I started learning all this stuff and putting it into practice, seeing the results. And I got excited. I never really planned on being a teacher in this. I never really planned on doing what I'm doing today. But after learning what I learned and seeing what was going on throughout the cocking world, within the chicken world, whatever, I was like, oh my God, all these people are doing it wrong. And it's a con. They're conning themselves. They're conning each other. They're conning other people. It just doesn't work. It's a fake. It's a facade. And so I would talk to them. I'd talk to Tony, and they didn't want to teach it. So I did. And I was excited to do it. And it took a while to take hold, but I think we're there. We're getting there all the time. In the beginning, it was kind of an uphill battle. I was swimming upstream like you wouldn't believe, because people just didn't want to grasp it. It was so against their paradigm that they didn't want to let loose of that. Those old wives' tales was all they had to hang on to learn something bigger and better. They struggled to do that. You know what I mean? So I always say, knowledge is power. Educate yourself on the proper structure of the bird. Educate yourself on the common defects that exist. And if you look on the website, we have something like 88 defects listed on that banner, and we go in there and talk about each one of them, show you what they are so that you can recognize them, show you how to eliminate them within your strain as you go. Okay. And then educate yourself on the common diseases. You don't need to know every disease. That's why I'm kind of against some of these chicken books on poultry diseases, because they're kind of confusing. There's so many out there. Most people don't know how to, determine what they're looking at. And even Dr. Gallardo says that the symptoms for all these diseases are almost the same thing. You don't know what you got until you take them to the lab and test them and find out exactly what you have to deal with and how to what to do about it. So educate yourself on the common diseases and stay away from the medications and the chemicals, and stay away from these medicine peddlers, and call the sick and breed to the healthy. And trust me, you're going to get there.
Yeah. Well, one statement you made there about, the diseases imitating the symptoms, imitating each other. I went through a spell one fall, and I'd got coryza in my birds. And I think this was late 80s, mid to late 80s. And went up feed one evening, and I had 2 birds that was rattling. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go again. I thought I got rid of it. Here it goes again. And at that time, I was medicating, and it didn't do any good. And to come find out a week later, they had pox. It wasn't even a respiratory disease. It was pox is what it was. And I've seen that so many times. People would have a pox problem, and it don't only go on the outside where you can see it, but it can be on the inside and not on the outside. And people just giving them antibiotics, and of course, if you know anything about pox, it's not treatable. They've just got to work their way through it. Mm-hmm. And it's easily done. You think it's one disease, and you're giving them medications for that disease, and it's not even doing anything to them. It's not helping them. Actually, you're doing them an injustice by doing that. But Kenny's right. If I had a disease on my place, I would send it off to my closest college that done the necropsies, and I would let them tell me what the disease was and what I should use to treat it with.
And you don't really have to do that unless you're having like it's affecting multiple. A lot of birds. Yeah. Okay. If you're just having one bird here and there, just get rid of it. Be done with it. Okay. If a bird dies just here and there, we call it the natural rate of mortality. But when it's affecting a whole bunch of birds, take one of your birds to the lab, find out exactly what it is. Then you can determine what to do about it. Okay. But like a lot of them are viruses. You're not going to be able to do a whole lot about them. They just have to run their course, and that's just it, And
especially now, they took all the drenches and antibiotics out of the United States. Only things left is the Mexico drugs. And a lot of those, you'll get one that's too strong, and then you'll get another one that doesn't even affect them. So I think that's going to hurt us worse than anything is the drugs coming over from Mexico across the border actually getting into the States. And that's where people that using medication, that's what they're going to turn to.
Well, even if they're getting the right drugs, that's a big if, they're not using them properly. Yeah. And even when they're using them properly, they're hiding the weakness. They're not curing anything, really. They're just hiding the weakness.
Just pretty much putting the symptoms on standby for a couple months, really. Is all
and it's being passed to the next generation. They're just promoting weak chickens. Okay. Bill says nothing in life is worth having. Nothing in life worth having is easy. Okay. And I agree with that. And it can seem very difficult in the beginning, when you're trying to create a strain and dealing with all the problems that exist. But once you clean them up and you get going, it's a lot easier than you think. When you get them to a point when they don't need medications, when they're not expressing those defects anymore, okay, and all you're doing is looking for the best ones and that are better than the parents, and just keep moving them forward, and they just keep getting better and better. Believe me, it becomes very easy. Ask Nancy, I hardly have any problems out there. I don't have sick birds. No. I rarely see a defect anymore, just on a rare occasion. But anytime I see any faults, I just get rid of it as fast as I can and just move forward. And the birds just keep getting better.
And with this cold spell that we're having right now, once it warms back up, okay, next week it's supposed to be like 63 next Thursday here. And we've having all these cold temperatures. There's going to be a lot of birds die in the next 3 weeks. Just for that, their immune system got knocked down. The diseases that they carry is going to be exposed. They're not going to be dormant anymore. They're going to come to light. And a lot of people is going to lose a lot of birds, if they're not medicating them, that is.
Yeah, they needed medications just to keep them alive. That's not a good place to be. You know, Frank, one of the biggest problems with trying to find the right birds, especially the ones that have all the traits you're looking for, is what gets in the way a lot is the name game and the percentage game. They're accepting birds that are subpar, that have serious problems because it has a special name. And I'm seeing so many people running into that problem.
Well, I was telling, I forget, one of the groups we was talking about that, and they said, what's the best advice to give a beginner? And people were saying, oh, get you a good family of hatch, get a good family of Kelso, get a good family of this, using those name games. And I put on there, and I thought I was going to get attacked. I really did. I held my breath when I was typing it out. And I said, don't worry about the 150 to 100-year-old names they attach to the chickens. Those don't mean nothing. It doesn't make the chicken better, worse, has nothing to do with it. I said, pretty much put your aspects on the person that's been breeding them for the past 5 or 10 years. Look at their achievements with those birds. Are they a good breeder? I said, that's what you need to focus on, is the birds and the breeder that's breeding them today, not the old names that they carry out. And I was really shocked. People was hitting the like on it, and I was like, wow. And I really thought I was going to get attacked, and I never got attacked one time over it. So, but now back up. If I'd done that 7 or 8 years ago, Kenny, they would rip me a new one.
Yeah.
They really would have.
Totally. I'll do coaching calls with my members and they go, I know you don't like the name game, but can I at least tell you what I was told they were so I can, tell me what you think they are. Tell me what you were told they are, and we'll move forward from there. As long as you know that once you get started, that name needs to go away. You're not going to add any new blood. You're not going to be infusing new blood anyways. These birds are going to take shape all by themselves. I mean, you're going to work them through the program and they're going to become yours. Just change the name as soon as possible. Those names don't mean anything, but let me know what you think they are and then we can move forward, because I grew up in this too. I lived through all this. The name game was in my life too. I didn't know how to, back in the old day, a long time ago, I didn't know how to talk to people without using those names. But, Frank, wasn't Frank, Tony and I would sit on his porch and we'd talk about that and just laugh that there's no way these names mean anything when they're always adding new blood, crossing this with crossing that if it just resembles it, they were going with it. Okay. They could have a whole yard full of birds. We knew these people very well. We knew how they got their birds and we knew how they were labeling them depending on what they look like. Had no idea what was really in them. So we started, Tony and I started calling it the name game. It was just a play on words. And we did get kind of attacked. People really had a problem with it, but I just couldn't play that game. I just couldn't go along with that. It just felt fake to me. It didn't seem real. And I just couldn't go along with it. And I even got my birds from Colonel Gibbons and they were called the Colonel Gibbons hatch. Well, I dropped all that, called them the Maximus line. A lot of people go, what the hell is the Maximus line? Well, they're my birds. And it took a while for that to take hold, but now everybody knows what the Maximus family is. They're mine. Okay. I don't call them hatch. I don't even call them Colonel Gibbons anymore. They're nothing like they were before. And anytime anybody shows me a Colonel Gibbons, they don't look anything like mine. So it just doesn't make sense. And then if you take the name game away, you also take the percentage game away, because now you're not dealing with half hatch, half Kelso, which they weren't anyways, or 3/4 this and 1/4 that. You take the name game away, you take away the percentage game, and we're all now on a level playing field. Either the birds are good or they're not.
Well, I'm sure there's some hatch that truly exists in this world.
You really? I don't know about that.
Yeah. Oh,
Really?
There's a game fowl breeder out there with the last name Hatch. I'm sure.
Oh.
But that's the only way they're going to exist.
I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
Before we go
That's the
through,
only way.
Hey, now you really want to go down this road with me?
like, what?
But,
Oh.
you got to look at it like this, though, Kenny. But, it might have been my mindset. I'm going to see what you think about it. But back when I was young, teenager, coming up, when you looked at when they called it, a round head or a Kelso or a whatever the name may be, they all look the same. They look like what they was called them. Like there's a couple breeds right now, like the Law and what they call the blue face. When you see one of them, I know what it is. You know, I know what it is. But to call them Hatch or Kelso, you know, I've said it it's old, but it's true. All these breeders, regardless of their name, they bred different strains of chickens, and everything come off that place was called Hatch, Kelso, Madigan, whatever their name was. But they was breeding different strains of chickens, but they still all call them by that name. Now, do those chickens exist today? No, they do not exist. I would feel free to say that nobody took those bloodlines and never added no blood to them. But even if they didn't add blood to them, they're not selecting like the original breeder did. So it's not that bird.
I will say this. When I was young, and they weren't any more pure than they are now.
Nope.
Okay. Hatch was not really Hatch. Kelso was. But I will say this, that when I was young, when we called something Hatch, or we called it Kelso, or we called it Claret, they at least looked the part. People were actually breeding them so they matched the part. Okay. They weren't any more pure than they are today. They just did a better job back then of selecting them so that they represented that particular strain. They're not even doing that these days, Frank. They're adding Peruvian in them. They're adding Asil in them. They're crossing this with that. They don't even look the part anymore. Have you seen a true Kelso? I mean, a Claret any lately?
Mm-mm.
I haven't either.
They were pea-headed brown and reds. And some guy was telling me that a brown and red was a black-breasted black.
Yeah.
That brown and reds didn't have the ginger, the salmon breast, you know. And, you know, I'm not making excuses for them, but in their defense, they probably never seen one before. You don't see them too often. The ones you do see is usually what they call a male Sims. They call that the brown and red, but it's black-breasted black. And that's what they call a brown and red nowadays. But a lot of the younger guys, especially, they've never seen a true brown and red ever.
I don't think as a group of breeders, I don't think we're advancing in representing our breed very well. We're actually going the other way. The only place I see that we're actually moving forward and doing a good job is with my members in the Breeders' Academy and what the pictures are posting on the Breeders' Academy group page. That gives me hope. I'm not seeing the language I see in other, or even the terminology or the vocabulary that I'm seeing on other Facebook pages. It's completely different. It's more insightful, educated, more perceptive. Okay. They kind of have an idea what direction they're going. Their fowl look the part. You're not seeing that in any other pages. I am so proud of my members. They're doing really well. And it gives me hope that we're actually making an impact.
You can tell by the birds that they're posting, the offspring that they're selecting to go back with. You can tell they're getting an eye for the conformation and type, the way the bird's supposed to look, the way the bird's supposed to function. So they're proving that they're learning and what they're learning inside the website just within the birds they post.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Before we go into the must-haves, the things that you must have for your birds, let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor.
You know what, Nancy? I'm going to skip that because we're ending in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I figured we'd go like a few minutes over and talk about the must-haves, but I guess not.
Okay. I'm not going to do the commercial. You got to do it like you know what? You need to do it at the 30-minute mark. Me and her go back and forth on this.
You weren't shutting up enough for me to get a word in there, so I couldn't do it.
You put in your input. That was a good time to do it. So don't give me that.
We all forgot about it.
In my defense, I didn't join until 18 minutes in. So
yeah, we all know how ready you were.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just
So
had to do my hair.
I was going to skip that part, but I guess we can cover it. The must-haves. First of all, they have to be healthy, vigorous. They got to be free of defects. They got to represent their breed. Man, these birds are too expensive to settle for less. They have to be good.
Yeah.
Make sure
who wants to go out and pay $2,000 for a bunch of birds that's got duck toe and all these defects with them, and take them home, and you're just, making more defects pretty much.
Well, they are, because they either don't know, or they think that's all they're going to get, or they let the breeder talk them into it. They don't look the part. Yeah, they have a problem, but they're a good family. Trust me, they're going to do well for you.
They don't look like much, but trust me, the offspring is unbelievable. They don't look the part, but just trust me. I've heard that, and I've heard that so many times.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go on the back. Thank you for joining us. I hope you join the Breeders' Academy so you can watch the whole show. Members, we'll see you on the other end.
Bye.
See you guys.